Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this great conference of the Republikon Institute and the Ezer Gyerek Alapítvány, 1000 Children Foundation in English. It's a great pleasure to see you all here. This is a conference that we are organizing as part of an EU program, so we are very thankful for our international donors for making this happen and making us available to organize such a great international panel today and a Hungarian panel afterwards. As you know, the topic of today's conference is green policies, and the title of the conference is European Green Perspectives. And we believe that this is a topic that is always very important to discuss, but probably it has a special significance ahead of the upcoming EP elections. So we decided to invite speakers from abroad and from Hungary to discuss this topic from a political and from a more green expert perspective as well today. As you know, the first panel of today's conference is going to be in English. So please, if you need a translation device then and you haven't got one yet, then you can come here to the front and you can take your headsets here. And the second panel is going to be in Hungarian. So those guests who probably do not speak Hungarian will have their devices, and you can also listen to the presentations and the panelists of the second panel in English. Just a couple of words about the format of today's event. First of all, I'm going to ask my colleague Márton Schlanger from Republikon Institute to give us an introductory presentation on green policies, and then we are going to continue with our international panel, and after a short break we are going to go on with the Hungarian panel afterwards from around noon. So I don't really want to waste any more time on myself. So just again, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for coming today. And Martin, the floor is yours. Please entertain us, and I wish you all a great morning.
Thank you. Switching to Hungarian now. Jó napot kívánok mindenkinek! Én Schlanger Márton vagyok, a Republikon kutatója, és nagyon röviden szeretnék beszélni pár dologról, amiről meglátjuk, hogy lesz a szó a beszélgetés során. Nyilván nem szeretnék ilyen ökológusként tetszelegni itt, én közvéleménykutató vagyok, és erről is fogok most beszélni. A magyarok zöld értékekkel, zöld politikával kapcsolatos attitűdjeiről csak nagyon röviden. Úgyhogy köszönjük, hogy velünk tartottak, vagyis velünk tartanak, és lássuk. Ugye Magyarországon a zöld értékek képviselete egy nagyon nagy kérdés, hogy hány ember vallja magát zöldnek, hány ember tartja fontosnak a zöld problémákat, és ugye azt lehet elmondani, hogy nagyjából a magyar emberek között azért megtalálhatók azok az emberek, akik elsőlegesen zöld értékrendűnek vallják magukat. Általában ezt úgy szokták megmérni itthon, hogy különböző világnézeteket sorolnak fel, és mindenki választ magának egyet, ami a legszimpatikusabb. Olyanok vannak, mint például konzervatív, nemzeti, liberális, szociális, szociáldemokrata, stb. Zöld. És ugye itt lehet látni ezen az első ábrán, 2 adatfelvételünk is van ezzel kapcsolatban, 2 és 3 évvel ezelőttről, hogy nagyjából a magyaroknak 9%-a vallotta magát elsődlegesen zöldnek 2021-ben, és aztán 7%, egy kis csökkenés, de tulajdonképpen hibahatáron belül. Tehát nagyjából egy olyan 5-10% között van valahol azoknak az aránya, akiknek a zöld identitás az elsődleges identitása Magyarországon. Nyilván ezzel nincsen benne a top 3-ban mondjuk úgy, mert van ez a bizonyos rendpárti identitás, van a nemzeti, ami nagyon magas volt, különösen a korábbi mérésünkben, és a liberális pedig magas volt az újabb mérésünkben. És aztán itt látható, hogy van egy ilyen nyugatias európér értékrend, amit igazából csak második alkalommal mértünk, ami pedig nagyon magas lett, és ehhez hasznos információ, hogy a 2022-es mérésünk az pár hónappal Oroszország, amikor megszállt Ukrajnát, azután történt, tehát azt gondoltuk, hogy valószínűleg ezért értékelődött fel annyira a nyugatias értékrend ebben az időben. Természetesen meg lehet nézni másodlagos értékrendeket is, és itt pedig azt lehet látni, hogy habár a zöld értékrend nagyon kevés ember számára elsődleges, de sokan másodikként már azt választják az egyébként első liberális, vagy szocialista, vagy egyéb nézeteik mellé. Ugye 15% az Magyarországon, aki, hogyha már választhat 2-t is, akkor a zöld is bekerül az identitásai közé. Ez az egyik leggyakrabban, vagy legnépszerűbb második identitás. Még egy utolsó dolog ezzel kapcsolatban, hogy ilyenkor azt is meg szoktuk kérdezni, hogy a válaszadók mit éreznek, hogy melyik világnézet áll tőlük a legtávolabb, és ebben pedig azt lehet látni, ami tulajdonképpen zöld szempontból egy pozitív fejlemény, hogy a zöld a legkevésbé elutasított világnézet Magyarországon, tehát még akkor is, hogyha mindenféle szitokszóval társul a politikai kommunikációban, hogyha valaki zöldnek vallja magát, a társadalom ezt még nem érzi. Ugye összesen 4% választotta a zöld világnézetet, mint tőle legtávolabb álló 2022-ben. Látható, hogy a szocialista, aminek ugye stigmája van Magyarországon, a legelutasítottabb, és utána pedig a hívő emberek, amiről szintén tudjuk, hogy csökken a hívek száma Magyarországon, eleve kevesen járnak templomba, stb. Így hát nem meglepő. És akkor a liberális és nemzeti nagyjából a két véglet, ilyen szempontból ugyanannyira elutasított, konzervatív szintén. Na most, ha látjuk, hogy azért vannak zöldek Magyarországon, majdnem 10%-nyi, akkor érdekes azt is megnézni, hogy ennek a pártpolitikai vonatkozása milyen, és azt lehet látni, hogy talán nem meglepő módon az ellenzéki szavazók körében azért magasabb a zöldek aránya, 8%, a Fidesznél ez, vagy hát a kormánypártoknál ez összesen 4% és csökken. Nyilván 2%-ból és 2 mérésből ezt nem lehet ilyen magabiztosan megállapítani, de tény, hogy inkább az ellenzéki oldalon vannak zöld szavazók. Egyébként nem látszik ezen az ábrán, de a bizonytalanok körében is megnéztük ezt az adatot, és a bizonytalanok körében kifejezetten sok a zöld, több mint az ellenzékek körében 10-11%, ami azt is jelenti, hogy azok, akik a politikától egy kicsit távolabb vannak, lehet, hogy attól még a zöld értékrenddel egy kicsit jobban tudnak azonosulni, sőt lehet, hogy pont azért, mert talán úgy érzik, hogy a palettán, pártpalettán nincs olyan párt, aki az ő értékrendjüket képviseli, lehet, hogy persze van 2 zöld párt, de összesen ugye 3-4-5%-on állnak, de lehet, hogy ezért is van a bizonytalanok között több zöld. Na most, ha van egészen sok, vagy relatíve sok zöld Magyarországon, akkor nyilván megkérdezzük, hogy mennyire tartják fontosnak, például mennyire, ugye ez a klímaszorongás kérdés, ami egy olyan fogalom, hogy egyre többen hallunk egyre többet. Van egy ilyen kérdésünk, amit szerencsére 2-szer is megkérdeztünk, ami úgy szól, hogy a klímaváltozás az egyik legnagyobb veszély az országra nézve, és azt kérdezzük a választóktól, hogy egyetértenek ezzel az állítással. Itt lehet látni azt, hogy azért volt egy jelentős csökkenés 2021 és 2022 között. Még így is a magyaroknak a túlnyomó többsége azt mondja, hogy ez az egyik legnagyobb veszély, hogyha így van megkérdezve. De nyilván például az orosz-ukrán háború is számíthatott abban a szempontból, hogy talán azt gondolták a szomszédunkban zajló háború kapcsán, hogy lehet, hogy a zöld, vagy hát a klímaválság az nem a legnagyobb veszély, ami ránk néz. Ugye ezt most is újra meg kéne mérni, az lenne az igazi. Na most, hogyha azt látjuk, hogy ekkora nagy egyetértés van abban, hogy a klímaválság az fontos és kezelni kell, akkor adja magát a kérdés először, hogy mit gondolnak erről az egyes pártok szavazói. Itt lehet látni szintén az előbb látott különbséget. A Fidesz-KDNP szavazóknak is egyébként a többsége így gondolkodik, vagy egyetért ezzel az állítással, és az ellenzékeknek pedig a 62%-a, tehát majdnem a 2/3 gondolja azt, hogy ez egy komoly probléma. És csak, hogy ne húzzam tovább az időt sokat, mert csak egy dolgot szeretnék mutatni, hogy akkor mi van akkor, hogyha másik problémákkal együtt kérdezzük meg. Egy nagyon gyakran visszatérő kérdés, hogy mi a legnagyobb probléma jelenleg Magyarországon, amivel az ország küzd, amivel ön küzd. Ez most egy adat ebből, de általában, amikor ilyeneket mérünk, akkor nagyon hasonló eredmények szoktak jönni. Tehát hiába van közel 10%-nyi zöld, magát elsődlegesen zöldnek valló ember Magyarországon, hiába gondolja az emberek több mint fele azt, hogy az egyik legfontosabb probléma, legalábbis ezzel az állítással egyetért, hogyha valójában választani kell és rangsorolni ezeket a problémákat, az legutolsó vagy az utolsó előtti a zöld. Ugye mivel ez egy 2021-es mérés, ezért az orosz befolyás még csak 1% mondta problémásnak, ez nyilván most magasabb lenne. Ami azt jelenteni, hogy lehet, hogyha most mérnénk, akkor a zöld lenne az utolsó, ezt persze nem lehet megtippelni. A legfontosabb problémák a fizetések, a megélhetés költségei, az egészségügy, nyugdíjak, stb. Minden e fölött van a demokrácia minősége, az oktatás színvonala, államadósság, a nemi egyenlőtlenség. Úgyhogy sajnos ilyen szempontból azt lehet látni, hogy amint bármilyen másik probléma felüti a fejét, a választói szinten legalábbis, és sajnos azt tapasztalható, hogy azért politikai szinten is jellemzően háttérbe szorulnak a zöld szempontok. Úgyhogy igazából ennyit szerettem volna csak ma mondani. Köszönöm, hogy figyeltek, és élvezzék az előadásokat. Köszönöm.
Well, thank you very much, Martin, for your presentation. I don't know if does this work? Probably it does. Okay, that's great. It works a bit differently than the other ones. Mindenek előtt hadd tegyem hozzá, Dóra emlékeztetett, hogy a kis bevezetőmet csak angolul mondtam el, és ezért elnézést kérek, ez azért van, hogyha az ember az angol és a magyar között gyakran váltogat, akkor előfordul, hogy egy kicsit elcsúszik. Úgyhogy magyarul is nagyon üdvözlök mindenkit, és ha esetleg az angollal probléma lett volna, szeretném még egyszer magyarul is jelezni, hogy tolmácskészülékeket itt találnak el, hogyha bárkinek szüksége lenne rá, akkor az természetesen elérhető. És most váltani fogok angolra. I'm now going to change back to English. So, Martin, thank you for your presentation, and I would like to introduce our first panel to discuss this topic. We have a great selection of experts from actually from Visegrad countries. Let me introduce you maybe from the window to me. Over there you can see Fredrika Klučová from the Czech Republic, representative of the Czech Institute for Politics and Society. Beside her there is Filip Bojtos from the Bratislava Policy Institute. And beside him there is Milos Hodun from Poland, our old friend from Poland, the international expert of Projekt Polska Association. And beside me is Dóra Győrffy, university professor and economist from Corvinus University, Budapest. And before we go into the discussion itself, as our guests are coming from 4 different countries, we asked them to give us some short 5-10 minute introductory presentations into the current state of green policies and the issue that we're discussing today in their respective countries. So we have a better view, a better insight into where this topic is, because I believe that there are big national level differences between the level of discussion on green policies in all these represented countries. So first, Dóra, I would like to ask you to give your presentation.
Thank you for the introduction. I made a presentation with PPT because I will show you a lot of data, and I will try to make it in 10 minutes, but please forgive me 1 or 2 minutes more. I want to talk about some public opinion survey as well as before. What does green objectives mean in Hungary, how it is in the European parliamentary elections, and some conclusions. So basically, I just give you one slide regarding. Okay, so I just give you one slide regarding how important it is for Hungarians climate change, the topic. And from this slide, what you can see is that, in fact, Hungarians consider climate change a serious problem, 87%. This is a Eurobarometer survey from 2023. And this is 10% point more than European average, although I also agree with the previous speaker that in fact, when there is a trade-off between environment or something else, especially growth, Hungarians choose the something else. Okay, so Hungarians are very, so they think climate change is very important, but green policies are important. We have seen in the previous presentation as well. But what green policies mean, they can mean a lot of different things, and at the European level, they mean energy transition away from fossil fuels, increasing productivity and more efficiency in resource use, circular economy and waste management, environmental protection and biodiversity, and climate change adaptation. And basically, what we see in Hungary is that parties pick different parts of this. But before we get there, I think it's very important to give the context about the political debate, so what's exactly going on with these green objectives in Hungary. So first of all, the energy mix in Hungary. We are far from getting rid of fossil fuels. Over half or 2/3 of Hungarian energy use is from fossil fuels, and they are also from imported, primarily from Russia. And we see that the share of renewable energy in Hungary is quite low. We also see that the share of Russian imports is very high, so is over 60%. And the very, very sad fact is that since the start of the war, since the aggression against Ukraine, this share did not decrease, unlike in everywhere else in the European Union, but it's increasing, so Hungary is contributing to financing the Russian war effort. We also see the share of energy from renewables. It's far below the European average, but one positive aspect is solar energy. So we see on the second figure that Hungarian solar energy is over the European average. So that's something that is showing some type of transition. One important aspect of resource use efficiency is that Hungarian productivity is very weak. What you see on the first slide is that total factor productivity is basically stagnant. So we are further from the EU average in 2024 than in 2010. And innovation, which would be important for improvements in productivity and efficiency of resource use, is way below the European average. So Hungarian growth is very much extensive, which means that more growth needs more resources. So there is no decoupling at all from resource use in the Hungarian growth model. And this is also what you can see in the trends in material use. So Hungary used to have a material use per capita lower than the EU average because of the lower level of development. But in the 2010s, this changed. So Hungary per capita resource use is higher than the EU average, and waste management is also problematic. So half of the waste is landfill, and recycling is again much lower than EU average. So this is what is the situation with green policies in Hungary. So the political debate is within this context, and it's important to point out. It's also important to show what is missing. So an independent environmental ministry is missing. There is no environmental ministry in Hungary. And also, there is not much talk about climate change adaptation or other aspect. And environmental ministry is missing is kind of a signal of how lax environmental regulations are, and basically the autonomy of environmental agencies is similar to other independent agencies, so it's weak. Okay, so within that, what are the green narratives in Hungary? So for the government narrative is that we will be a winner of the green transition, because Hungary will become an electric vehicle battery-making superpower. So you can see it here that Hungary is number 4 in terms of producing batteries in the whole world after China, the US, and Germany. And the government equates this with green transition. The method of attracting these companies from South Korea and China are extreme amount of state aid, lax environment and labor regulations. Hungary has basically no resources to have this production, and it increases its energy needs, and this energy is coming from Russia. It's highly unpopular with the public as well, so it opens a political potential for the opposition to fight for stronger environmental regulations. The government also considers building the PAX-2 nuclear plant by the Russians, by Rosatom, as contributing to the green agenda, and they are very proud of the increase in the use of solar energy. But it's also important that wind is prohibited, So you cannot have a wind power plant within 12 kilometers of populated locations, which means basically nowhere in the country. The opposition tries to capitalize on the unpopularity of this battery superpower idea by the government. So they basically have this mainstream European green agenda, which means the focus on renewables, including wind power, increasing energy efficiency, and spending on education, working on innovation, and basically a transition to a knowledge-based economy, which is important for productivity. There is a strong resistance to increasing the number of battery manufacturing plants from the opposition, and they want to have an independent environmental ministry. We have a new party, the TISA party, which is gathering over 10% in various surveys, 10-20%. It's unclear what their program is. One thing that, they want an independent environmental ministry and stricter environmental regulation, but Peter Magyar, by my understanding, has been very vague and ambiguous on whether making batteries is a good idea, and he thinks that it can be a good idea and it's only a matter of monitoring. But if you think about having ministry, having a integrity authority against corruption, I think having an environmental ministry against environmental to monitor environmental rules might have the same impact. So to conclude, both the government and the opposition claim adherence to and commitment to green objectives, but what it means is very different for them. So for the government, environmental commitments are okay as long as they don't conflict with business considerations. So environmental objectives are always subordinated to industry, agriculture, and construction interest. And basically, the lax environmental regulations are a prime factor in the country's competitiveness, especially in the electric vehicle battery production. The opposition recognizes the political potential of fighting against this battery superpower idea. 2/3 of the people don't want this. And there is a widespread resistance, so that's their green agenda to focus on the environmental protection. So what we can see, and I think it's a general European lesson from the Hungarian case, is that climate objectives and environmental objectives can clash. And I think in Hungary you see a prime example when they clash. Thank you. Oh, this is the Hungarian green policy with CATL plant in Debrecen. Thank you.
Thank you. Dora, sorry. Thank you very much for your presentation. I have to say that I'm in a special position because as a Hungarian, I have much more knowledge about the Hungarian situation, and I completely recognize my country from your presentation. So I have to say that this is a very positive feedback. It was very recognizably Hungarian. And Philip is the other panelist who prepared the PowerPoint presentation for us. So Philip, please continue. We are really interested to see how Slovakia does in the field.
Thank you. So I made a presentation and I'll try to frame you the current situation about the climate policies and environmental policies in Slovakia, so you can imagine the current situation. For many years, since the 90s, almost until a few years ago, climate policies was only, how to say, like expert topic and really minority topic between politicians. And it wasn't really like the big political topic, but it started to change in the last few years. I'll try to put here some of the most important events in the recent years regarding to the climate policies. Firstly, I would start with that when we look at the 30 years of the Slovak Republic and the environmental policies, there wasn't any big enviro reform, and always every green law was like going from law to law and from part by part. Sorry. And the biggest change started in 2019 when the ending government of the Mr. Pellegrini, then Prime Minister, declared that they agree to European Union carbon neutrality commitment, and then next year in 2020 the new government of the Mr. Matovic agreed and make a framework for achieving the climate neutrality by 2050. What is important to say that this framework was agreed to unanimously. Like every party agreed that with that framework, and then the next generation EU, the new funds came to the public discourse, and there was set a goal by the government that most of the funds goes to the decarbonization. And in the 2021, the government closed the last coal mine. Then we have a petition which was called Climate Needs You. It was the biggest petition in Slovak history, with almost 130,000 people signed it. And I think that most of the experts agreed that this is a moment when the environmental topic and the green policies became more politicized, because many parties started to talk about the economical problem and many we can say the populist things which were not true. Then we have 2023 and the new power block of the nuclear plant in Mochovce, and Slovakia became self-sufficient in energy. Why am I mentioning that? It's because when we look at the energy mix in Slovakia, there is a big agreement between every party that Slovakia needs to invest more in nuclear energy, and it's, I think, currently only one thing, only thing that they can agree to, and the last of the most important events is the elections, which were the September last year, and the fourth government of the Mr. Fico, and the SNS party, Slovak National Party, got the Ministry of the Environment. It was a big change in climate policies in Slovakia, because the SNS party is really anti-climate policies, and they don't support Green Deal. They don't support decarbonization. They don't support reducing the emissions. So in 2023, there was really a big turning point for the climate policies in Slovakia. Two important numbers. When we look at the greenhouse gas emissions, Slovakia reduced it by 41% when we compare it to 1990. And now it's an important number because the last few governments made a commitment that they want to reduce it by 55% to 2030. But the current government is not acting like this. And the second important number, as I mentioned before, 43% of the amount from the allocated funds in the Next Generation EU goes to green economy, mostly to decarbonization of the industry, because the industry and the heavy industry made almost the third of the Slovak GDP. And the the other parts of the investment goes mostly to renewable energies. So how does it look before the green policies before the European Parliament elections? We must say that, or I can say that the biggest topics before these elections are mostly two of them. First of them is Green Deal, and few parties are making Green Deal as the main topic of their political campaign because of these sayings that the European Union want to destroy our industry, and you can imagine this kind of says in the political campaign. And the second one, and it's really specific for Slovakia, and maybe it can sound quite funny, but the bears and wolves become one of the biggest topics before the European election, because the Slovak National Party don't want to safeguard ecosystems and national parks. It was for the 30 years, and want to start shooting and hunting bears and wolves, and it's against the law that was agreed in the European Parliament. So now, maybe quite funny topic, but it's one of the biggest in a political discourse. So to frame it, when we look at the current political parties which are in the National Council, mostly three of them, or we can say that mostly three of them have a climate or environmental policies as one of their main policies. Main parts of the political program. First of them is Progressive Slovakia, the blue logo. It's currently the biggest opposition party. We can say central left, mostly progressive liberal, and we can say that they are the most pro environmental, pro green political party. The second one is, as I mentioned before, the Slovak National Party, and they are against all these policies. And there is a big conflict about the green policies in Slovakia, mostly between them, as they are from the other side of the political spectrum, and they have a conflict about these topics a lot. And the third one is Freedom and Solidarity Party, which is always talking in this campaign when we look at the climate policies about the Green Deal and the economical threat and the economical challenges. Okay, so when we look at the newest survey or poll made by the Eurobarometer, we can see that the climate policies are not as important for the Slovak voters as many other topics. And when we look at the average of the European Union countries and at the Slovak numbers, we can see the really big drop from 27% to 15%. So it's not as important for many voters, and I would say, as before, it's mostly important for the voters of the Progressive Slovakia and Slovak National Party because of their conflicts in this topic. And what it means for the European election, Slovakia has always, sadly, the lowest turnout in the European election, in all three elections. But what it means, to the European elections comes mostly the voters which are pro-Western, mostly liberal, which like European Union. So it means that the results of the European Parliament elections was always really, really different against the results of the votes of the elections in the National Council and other elections. For example, in 2019, when we look at the progressive Slovakia, they won these elections with almost 22% of the votes, but in parliamentary elections, which were a few months after, they didn't even got to the parliament, and they got almost the same number of the voters, but because of this lower turnout, they won the European election. So what it means, what this turnout means for the European elections is that we can expect that the mostly the progressive Slovakia will have many MPs in the European Parliament, and their biggest topic is the enviro policies and the agreement to Green Deal. So this is everything from my short presentation, and I look forward to discussion.
Philip, thank you very much for introducing Slovakia to us from a green perspective. Actually, just before going on, the number that I found really interesting was the 41% reduction in emissions since 1990. And this is something that has come up so often, even in Hungarian context, when the Hungarian government was so proud of its greenhouse gas emission reduction. But when the base year is 1990, that's a really big problem, because they forget to say that actually the vast majority of that reduction took place in the first half of the 90s with the downsizing of the industry. And ever since, that was actually a much lower decrease. So I think it's very interesting that there is also a comparison in Slovakia to the situation in 1990, which is not necessarily telling of the actual efficiency of current environmental policies. But I also think it was very interesting to hear in both of your presentations that there is a gap between people's understanding of environmental problems. So people understand that there are issues about climate change, that they believe that it's true, that the rate of climate skeptics is relatively low, but it's a different question how important they find this problem to be and how high it is on their priority list. So I'm really curious to hear how it is in, well, first probably in the Czech Republic.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting as well. So I will use the disadvantage and advantage in the same time for not using the PowerPoint to don't bore you with another more numbers. But I would like to mention that in Czech Republic we have at least 6 governmental environmental programs, and many more small programs with financial support from the EU. 2 most important programs are State Energy Concept and Green Saving Program. Green Saving Program, I think, is the most important in Czech Republic because it's basically financial support from the governments for homeowners to let's say rebuild or try to renovate their houses based on a green policy. However, as you could see in Dorka's presentation, we are second worst in the EU in the importance of a green policy changes. So you can imagine how hard for the government is to push those programs to the public, to the people. Some more numbers. Based on a recent public opinion poll, more than 76% of the Czech population is worried about the climate change. However, the only action we as a Czech are willing to do is to recycling and supporting planting trees. And I'm sorry for the world, but it's only caused by laziness. We as a Czech people, we are just lazy to make any changes to change anything to make it more green. More to that to add in context of EU elections. The most important topics for the elections is not a Green Deal. The most important topics are migration, foreign threats as a Russia, or energy security, and for young people is people for work to study, or those kind of topics as a work and house problems. The expected turnout for EU elections in Czech Republic is 30%. So it's the elections in Czech Republic with the lowest turnout. Again, it's important for government to change that, however, it's hard to them. More to add to this topic is that surveys shows that the general skepticism towards Green Deal cause very strict and very strange quotes, which our leaders of EU parties, EU leaders for running for EU Parliament. For example, there were quotes such as "green ideological madness" towards to Green Deal. Another, the Green Deal is a tragedy, and the Green Deal as a green madness again. So you can make your own opinion about that, but this is how it looks like in Czech Republic towards the EU election and the Green Deal.
Thank you very much, and Milos, please continue. Let us know how our green policy is going to be the thing that take people to vote in Poland.
Maybe. Thank you so much for the question, and thank you so much for having me here once again. It's always a pleasure, and it's always, I think, so difficult to be the last in a panel, because there has been so many interesting things and so many things. I had my speech prepared more or less, but then I was like, oh, I should also talk about this and that and the bears in Slovakia. This is all very, very inspiring. So in Poland, I would say that environment and climate has never been the biggest part of the political discourse, and I think it's very important for me to stress environment and climate, because we are talking about the green policies, but if you look at the Polish context, and I believe also at the context in other of our countries, it's very important to distinguish between environment and climate, because I think climate policies, climate change is something that is pretty much absent in the political discourse and in the general understanding of the Polish public opinion. This is something far away. This is something distant. This is something that we see in data that people simply do not fully understand, because it's such a complicated and complex issue. So what politicians do when you look at their programs, manifestos, and there is a chapter called Climate and Environment, is basically all about environment. And this is something that grew on people, and this is something that has changed through the years, and especially the urban population, and especially the younger population, are in favor of pro-environment policies. And if you look again at data, when Polish people are asked, what's important for you in the area of green policies, what's the most important, and has been the topic in Poland for years, always parties are hiding behind it, is air quality. So many parties, even those you would call progressive ones, centrist, democratic, they hide themselves, if it comes to environment and climate, behind the question of air quality. Because this is something that Polish people really care about, because we have one of the worst air quality in Europe. If you look, again, at different rankings, especially in the winter, where the air is the worst, it's normally in the top 10. You have plenty of cities in India, Bangladesh, and Poland. And so this is something that people are very concerned about. 30,000 people die in Poland because of bad air quality yearly. And mostly in the cities in the south, in our most industrialized regions, but also in the beautiful touristic city of Kraków, which is in the valley, and they have terrible air quality in the winter. So this is what people care about. And then if you look further at this question, people also care about the quality of our rivers. much connected with the scandal we had 2 years ago when the river Oder on the border with Germany basically died off because of what mines were doing to the river. They were putting the salty water, and basically all the life in the rivers, in some parts of the river, died, and it was a massive catastrophe. So people care about that. So you can see that people are more and more aware of the state of the environment, of the air, of rivers, of forests. We fight for our forests. This is also something that was very important part of the fight against the previous government, against the Law and Justice government, because what they did to our primary forest that we have on the border with Belarus, right? The only European primary forest, the Białowieża forest that we share with Belarus, the only forest untouched for hundreds or thousands of years, and they just decided to cut trees there. So it was a huge anti movement in the country. So people were really protesting against cutting this forest, rightly so. So this is about the environment, I would say. And we have a Ministry of Environment and Climate. We had it for even under the previous government. You mentioned a couple of times an independent Ministry of Environment. And I don't know, in the Polish context, no minister is really independent. This is all very centralized. And even if we had under the peace government, the Law and Justice government, the Ministry of Environment, it was not independent at all. Contrary, the guy who was in charge of this ministry for many years, he was the biggest fan of chopping the trees from national parks. He was a hunter, and so we had it, but really didn't work. So let me now comment on the climate part, let's say. Of course, connected to environment, but I think we should look at a bit from a different angle, because again, what it means in the Polish context. For many years, climate, and some years ago also environment, meant one other thing, mining, right? So again, Poland is dependent on coal. We are a huge coal producer, we've always been, we had mines, we had one of the mines in Poland is the biggest single CO2 or green gas emitter in the European Union. We have still mines that are open, they're being open. We still have mines that are being expanded. A huge conflict between Poland and Czech Republic and partly also with Germany. The Turów mine on the border of the three countries. So this has been this is very important for Poland. This is a political topic, right? So again, all the topics that become important are political because parties are interested. If you look at data researchers say that between 350,000 to 500,000 voters are connected to mining industry. A huge number of people, especially in the southern part of the country. So none of the big parties can afford to say we have to close the mine, we finish it, like full transition, la la la. This is not going to happen because parties know how many voters are dependent on jobs in mining industry, and also people know. Of course, people are talking about closing mines, and this is happening, but slowly because of the election results. And there is so much hypocrisy here, because first of all, we are mining less and less. Right now, the levels of Polish coal mining is on the level of the year 1910. So basically, we were mining, pretty much what we mined like over 100 years ago. So it was the peak in the 70s, and then it was a drop. If we continue the drop, we will stop mining in 2040. But this is not going to happen because we will still keep some mining. So according to the plans, we will stop mining in 2049. Sounds, pessimistic. Again, Poland is this black character if it comes to mining and polluting in Europe. But we started working on it, and there is a plan. The previous government adopted a plan. The new government is updating it. We just got they sent the first draft of the new updated climate and environment plan to Brussels. It was harshly commented, but it was just the first draft. I believe that this will be progressed. But mining is still a big thing, and I would say a big hypocrisy again, and a big lie, because we are, again, mining less and less, but still politicians are not able to say, okay, we have to stop it, we have to do something about it. This is still, the story is going on and on because of the people who are dependent on these jobs. And the previous government was particularly, so the peace government was particularly interested in the votes of these people, in the votes of miners and their families, so they're pumping a lot of money into mining. An average Polish family pays every year around 130 euros to keep our mining industry alive, right? So on one side, all the governments have been telling us, mining, this is mines and coal is our black gold. This is what we have. This is our treasure. On the other side, this is economically ineffective, and basically we all pay to keep this industry alive. So we are all paying for these votes for the party who are campaigning there. And will it change? So as I said, there are some first optimist plans. We have our energy strategy 2040, and you have some dates. Also because of this pro-mining industry or lobbying, the previous government that we had for 8 years was very much against the renewable energies, because one of the ways of thinking was, okay, if we support renewables, if we transfer money there, then the miners will be angry, and again 500,000 votes. So they were not doing it. Basically in 2015, when that government came to power, our photovoltaic and also the windmills production, or the development of the production, stopped. We also had still have probably the terrible law about constructing new windmills. You said it's 2 kilometers here, right? From 12 kilometers. Okay, in Poland is 10 times the height of a mill, which still made it impossible to build a single new farm, a windmill farm in the country, because just the country is pretty densely populated, and it was impossible to build it. Now the new government changed it, so we are expecting a boom in windmills. We are the fastest growing sun power plant country in Europe, because this is very popular, especially among the people, families who are putting their own installations. And yesterday it was updated and announced that the first nuclear power plant will be opened in 2040. So the changes are there. We are supposed to limit our gas emission, we're supposed to close our last mine in 2049. We are supposed to reduce our gas emissions compared to 1990 by 70% in 2040, and trying to reach the neutrality in 2050, but probably unlikely. But we'll see. Right now, in this government we're having, which is a multi-party government, right? In fact, there's 11 parties in the government. For the first time, there's a Green Party represented in the government. Very weak, but represented. Part of they have a deputy minister in the Environment and Climate Ministry. So they're also trying to push their agenda, but it's getting very slowly. And Donald Tusk, the current prime minister, he also knows that he cannot push all the progressive agenda that maybe he believes in. But he knows that fighting against the populists we're still having in the country, Law and Justice, who are still the strongest party, he cannot really give up on all the parts of their agenda, because Polish people for 8 years were victims of the propaganda of that government, and the last government was telling them, you should not really care about the climate, we should care about ourselves. We should care about the sovereignty of Poland and not really about the Green Deal from the European Union. And so, for example, the previous government issued 4 actions in the European Court of Justice in Luxembourg against Fit for 55. And this government decided not to withdraw them. So, this government is going to still balance. I believe that there is going to be a progress, there is going to be a change, but not so easy. So if people in Brussels and some other European capitals expected that this government will be, will open their arms widely and adopt and accept all the environmental policies of Brussels, this is not true. The new government, I think, is going to be an even more difficult partner for European partners, because they're playing the game in the right way. They are not destructing everything. They are not being so defensive all the time, but they're going to be a very difficult partner also in the area of environment. And I think I'll finish here.
Milos, thank you very much. And you said how difficult it is to be the last speaker on a panel, because of how many things were said before you spoke, but you can only imagine how difficult it is to be the moderator, hearing all this stuff, and you want to ask all questions about all the topics that came up, but I just have to choose one. And actually, I'm really happy that in the end of your presentation you spoke about the European relations and the EU's role in national level green policies, because I think this is very important to discuss, and probably this is the direction where I would like to turn our discussion now. Particularly keeping in mind dependence on certain sources of energy. And I'm saying it like this because I believe the situations are different, because Dóra, you spoke about Hungary's dependence on Russian energy, for instance. Milos, you mentioned the importance of coal, even though actually Polish voters have to pay for keeping the industry up, but still coal is considered to be a very important source of energy, even if it's not necessarily true at the efficiency level. But I'm really curious about your opinions on how the EU affects your national level policies when it comes to either the protection of the climate and green transition, and how the EU's push towards decreasing energy dependence, especially from Russian energy, particularly since the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, has affected your country's national policies towards this. And whoever would like to speak first, I'm really happy to listen to all of your opinions. So I don't want to set a specific order. Please.
I can just continue, because I stopped with the EU policy, so maybe I can just add just a bit and then give you the mic, because this is very important. I think without the pressure from Brussels, like, Poland would not change much in the area of climate and environment. Also, this is the EU that's been pushing us to conduct the reforms. This is, I think, the EU that is, you know, keeping us on track. So this is a very important partner to all the forces who see that what we have is ineffective and is just wrong. And you ask about the changes after the full-scale aggression of Russia on Ukraine. I think it's important to stress that Poland and some other countries, especially the Baltic countries, you know, we're warning about the dependency on Russian energy sources for many years. So we were trying to prepare ourselves as much as possible to diversify, building the port for LNG gas, and trying to get this basically our fossil fuels from different sources. And here, just a little caveat is also a little in brackets, is that, again, they're saying we have so much coal, but still we are importing coal from Russia. Still, we are doing it, but not only, like Poland, who is saying we have so much coal. We are importing coal from South Africa, Australia, Indonesia. This is coming, right? So we're subsidizing our own coal, but still it's cheaper to get the coal from other sources, and we are getting it. So we're still supporting the Putin's regime because we are getting the fossil fuels from Russia, even though Poland and any government you can have in Poland will be strongly anti-Putin, anti-Kremlin. They are all supporting their budget, and you know where Putin's budget goes to, right? It's basically go to arm the forces that are fighting in Ukraine. So yeah, and maybe just to finish that, I will answer the question that you asked me before about will environmental or climate policies influence these elections now. Yes, they will, because like in other countries, the Green Deal became one of the key topics in these elections. But again, people who are using it, they don't care about climate or environment. This is all just a proxy to talk about sovereignty. If Poland wants to be a sovereign state, should get rid of the Green New Deal, because this is something from Brussels, from Berlin, from Paris, so something foreign. We should not be influenced by that. And so this is the rhetorics of the far right and even further right, who are from different angles saying Green New Deal is against us, is against our sovereignty, is against our farmers. We had the huge farmers protests connected, and they started to be an anti-import from Ukraine protests, but they actually ended up with narrative against Green New Deal exclusively. And this is what you see right now on the buildings. I bike every day next to the next to the headquarters of the biggest Polish trade unions, and the huge banner they have on the entire block is against the Green New Deal. So basically, there's so many actors against Green New Deal because, yeah, it's about our jobs, it's about sovereignty. So this is, I think, for the first time, the environment and climate can, in a way, play an important role in the elections. And again, let me stress that the current government, Prime Minister Donald Tusk, he also is not supporting it, right? So he's also, he sees what's the general feeling among the public, and he's not saying, okay, I'm gonna be the protector of Green New Deal. No, he's not doing it because he knows that he would lose the votes, because he sees the numbers, and he sees that almost 80% of Polish people supported the protests of the farmers, of a very small, very radical group of people who were basically protecting their own interests, I think in a very wrong way, but people support them, because they say they are our farmers. So even the Prime Minister cannot now say, okay, I support the Green New Deal.
Okay, I will add to Miloš, because you touched some topics which are currently issue in Czech Republic. We also had some farmer protests, as in Poland, but the difference is that people don't care. They were just angry because the traffic was crazy because of that. The Prague was full of the heavy tractors and all the heavy technique from the farmers, but they didn't really care about what they are protesting against. Firstly, and secondly, it's about the economy, so they are more afraid of losing the independence, that we lose the independence cost, that the farmers are just losing their businesses. So this is the situation in Czech Republic related to the farmers. And to answer the question about the EU and the topic of the election, I believe that the Green Deal, as I mentioned, is a big topic. However, it's a completely complicated situation for government, because our government is basically using the EU regulations to push the laws which are not that popular, but it's needed. We know it's needed, the government knows it's needed, so they are pushing it with an excuse of this is coming from the EU. So it's not our fault, we have to do it because we are a part of the EU. So this is how it works with the government in Czech Republic related to that.
Okay. Well, I am listening with some envy about all the discussions about the Green New Deal in your countries. So we don't have that. So basically, I think Hungarians are so preoccupied with what's happening within our borders that there is very little attention to what's happening with Green New Deal. And European regulations are somehow seen as completely external. So one point that the government often mentions, that after 2035, with the Fit for 55 program, there can be no new cars sold, traditional ICE cars. So a lot of batteries will be needed. So that's about that's about all the reference, and it's not really questioned. And the other thing why it's missing in Hungary, so Hungary is not getting funds from the Recovery and Resilience Fund because of the rule of law concerns. So the government is not exactly keen on talking about how much money is lost because of the problems with the rule of law and corruption. The opposition is fighting within itself, and we have very little talk about all these issues that are big deals in your countries.
I would answer on 3 levels when we are talking about the European pressure or European Union policies in Slovakia. For the last year, there was 3 big or last year or last 2 years, there was 3 big topics. Firstly, the discussion at the European level if the nuclear energy should be considered as the green source of energy. And as I mentioned before, more than 65, almost 70% of the Slovak energy mix is made from nuclear energy. And because of that, also Slovakia has a problems with Austria, who is anti-nuclear, and the whole political spectrum wanted to make nuclear energy to consider as a green on the European level, and Slovakia was a member of the nuclear coalition, if we can say it like this, led by President Macron, a French president. So this was the first topic. Second one, when we talk about the Green Deal, is Euro 7 norm related with the cars and banning some engines, and Slovakia is the biggest producer of the cars in the European Union, and the car industry is the biggest industry in Slovakia. So the Euro 7 is another big topic in which the political parties are fighting against as a part of the Green Deal. And the third one was the sanctions after the full-scale invasion in Ukraine 2 years ago. And in one of the rounds of the sanction was the banning of the fossil fuels that comes from Russia. And for Slovakia, it was the political conflict started because one part of the political spectrum is really pro-Russian, another part, current opposition, is pro-European, pro-Western, and the biggest refinery in Slovakia got their oil from Russia, and in the end, the Slovakia and also with Hungary, if I'm correct, opted from these sanctions and made an agreement that they sadly still can get their oil from Russia for another few years. So these was the three biggest topics when we talk about the European green politics in Slovakia.
Well, thank you very much for all this. And I was wondering, so far you have been talking about, because I asked you about your respective countries' national level policies and the EU policies effects on your country's approach to green and environmental issues. But I was wondering, to be completely honest, and don't think too bad of me for saying this, but while I was considering what to discuss today, it took me quite a couple of minutes to realize that actually it's going to be the representatives of the V4 countries at the table. I just didn't think of it that way, because when I think of green policies, when I was having all these environmental or climate issues on my mind, I really didn't think of the V4 as a relevant actor in any way. And I was just thinking that now you're all here from Poland, Slovakia, the Czech Republic, and Hungary. Do you think that there is anything common in our economies, in our societies, that could actually be some sort of source of joint effort in a field of green policies from the Visegrad countries? Like either is there some level of potential ground for cooperation in environmental policies, or is there any recommendation that the V4 could bring to Brussels on any sort of common issue that we all consider to be important and that has some regional relevance for the V4? Or are we just too separated for them? Maybe we have policies or problems or issues that are just too nation specific. What's your take on this?
I'm not sure, because to be honest, when we look at the V4 in the last few years, the Visegrad countries can agree on what they don't want, not propose something in a common. And after the elections in Poland and also in Slovakia, to be honest, I think that V4 looks more like V2 and V2, not with Slovakia and Hungary and Poland and the Czech Republic. And when we also look, as all of us said, about our energy mix, about our differences in these positions, to be honest, I don't think that something like this is realistic now.
I tend to agree. For me, what was very interesting from your presentations is that actually in all of our countries, how weak is the commitment to mitigate climate change. You didn't talk about climate adaptation. It's not a big issue in Hungary either. So basically it's just the weakness of the green idea in all 4 countries. And what potential it has, it's like blocking these blocking these objectives in the European Union, and that's not a very constructive contribution to green issues. So I think what is stopping that is exactly the political differences. So Czech Republic and Poland versus Slovakia and Hungary, which is very sad on the one hand. On the other hand, I don't think it would be constructive for the European level to have a block again, which is blocking progressive green policies.
I'm afraid you are right, because as you might saw, Czech Republic is right now kind of leaving the V4 in the light of the current elections in Slovakia especially. We kind of stopped our brotherhood, let's say. So the only thing which can put us together, I think, it's farmers, as we saw with Miloš from Poland. It seems like a topic which is common for all the 4 countries, which might be the topic and the way where can we go together. But I'm afraid, in the light of the war in the Ukraine, which is, I think, the main issue right now, it's something which will separate us.
Okay, I'll try to be optimistic to change the mood. But I will start with this pessimistic note too. I mean, if you ask about the common action and the V4, I think you need political will and all that, and we don't have that because, it's 2 and 2, or I don't know, 2 + 1 + 1. So I don't really believe in much of coordinated action. This is one thing. But now
maybe I should have put my question in a hypothetical. Like, could there be a common ground for cooperation?
Yeah, like, theoretically, I think yes. So I believe in the regional cooperations here in Central Europe. I think there is many things that connects us, unites us, and we should use it, as many other countries in Europe use it, even if they are not the same. So I think that there is a potential, and again, if we divided it into climate and environment, I think there is, I can see easier the potential in cooperation in environment, because I think we face similar challenges here. So I don't see why we shouldn't fight together these challenges we have in area of environment protection, of animal protection, biodiversity protection, our rivers protection, or forests, restoration of wetlands, or one thing that I find very important for the region is the food security. I mean, I think you mentioned that in your countries, security is the biggest buzzword before this EP elections. Agree, but this is not only about military security, it's also about energy security, but it's also for us, I mean, in Poland, it's about the food security. We produce food, and I think this is very true about the entire region. So and ecological food, healthy food, this is something that could be and should be, I think, a trademark of the region. And this, I see potential to cooperate here in the area of environment, but also in the area of climate. I think there is many things that we could and should work as a region together and support. So first of all, it's in investments in infrastructure, in energy infrastructure, interconnectivity between our countries, but also between the region and other places, right? So I mean, Poland has been investing for many years in these interconnectors between Lithuania, between Scandinavia, because the more integrated we are as a region, the more we are integrated also in this energetic level as European Union, the better for us, the safest for us. We are more secure. So, and I think for our country, this security means also security vis-a-vis our big neighbor on the east, that some of governments here like, some don't like. But I think we all should be secure from the threat that coming from there. And building this interconnectivity between our countries and between the region and other parts of Europe is very important. So we can easily import and export energy. I mean, and also we as a region acting vis-a-vis right now Ukraine. I mean, there are days, I think, in these days, where Ukraine gets most of its energy actually through border with Poland, Hungary, and Slovakia. So this is very important for the security and for the safety of the region. And I think we as a V4 could lobby and should lobby for more money, more investment in this infrastructure. But also other things that are important to get the goals, the climate goals, the neutrality goals. It's like, for example, the thermal efficiency of our buildings, thermal efficiency of our infrastructure. I think all the 4 countries, with the past that we have, you know, of communism, being in the bloc, we still have a lot to do in this area. A lot of investments, a lot of improvement is needed. So this is something that we could talk about together to convince our partners in the West and South who have different issues and who may not understand fully what we are talking about. So yes, I think that there are some platforms, that there are some areas where we could and should work together and speak with one voice.
Oh, thank you very much, and I'm really happy that you brought this this positive tale to this round of discussion. And please don't misunderstand me. I'm not trying to drag this conversation back into pessimism, but as a closing question, I would really like to talk to you about the effects of the crises of the latest years on the state of the discussion of green and climate issues in our national public discourses. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but if maybe that's just my personal perception, but I believe that in 2019 the green topic was much more central to the campaign of the then EP elections, and maybe you remember that actually the Greens had a much better result in the EP elections than anybody had expected before, and currently, it seems that the Greens are having, we will see, because we've only seen some predictions, and there's still a month until the EP elections. But the Greens are expected to achieve a much worse result than they did 5 years ago. And my perception is that the entire topic is just not that high on the agenda as it used to be. Do you think that is a result of this age of perma-crisis that have been around us for the last 5 years, starting from COVID, through wars, through inflation, energy price shocks? Is it this? And just to have a positive note to that as well, is there anything that you could recommend, or do you have any idea how green issues could be brought back to the surface of political discussion?
Well, environmental policy and environmental action has this wave-like characteristics over the decades. So it's not a new phenomenon at all. So environmental issues have been on the agenda, like basically only from the 1970s. So it's quite new. And once they were brought up, the oil crisis already shut it down. So basically, it's always when everything seems to be fine and we can worry about the environment. But by now, I think we hit a point where everybody sees that climate change is occurring. Hungary had an extreme drought 2 years ago, so people are very much aware of the issue. But now they are also very much aware of the cost of acting against it. And I think it's this idea, distributional cost, which are on the agenda. And on the other hand, there is also the need to do something. So what you mentioned about the Czech Republic, that recycling is something that is supported. This is also not controversial in Hungary. So sometimes it is good that you don't have things on the agenda, so everybody takes it for granted, and this has to be done. But basically, this is characteristic of the whole policy, and we are facing trade-offs, and we are facing distributional issues. So the Hungarian government is trying to frame the green transition. Okay, it's good for the environment to produce batteries, not for Hungarian environment, but for the world, and it's also good for business. So kind of finding this win-win solutions. I don't think in Hungary this works for the government, but they are trying. So identifying win-wins, and also I think something that we didn't talk about it is who has to pay the cost of these. And you have mentioned in the case of Poland that coal mining is subsidized, and it is bad for business and bad for the environment, but it's politically still helpful. Hungary doesn't get the funds needed for, improving our energy system. On one of my slides, you could see that 20% of the energy gets lost in the network and the transformation. So it's extremely inefficient. So investing into energy efficiency and investing in saving energy and not bringing in industry which requires a lot of energy would be something to put this issue on the agenda. But it's kind of the issue of framing, try to understand that there are win-win. And I think, for example, this issue of increasing productivity and turning towards the knowledge economy, it's good for business and good for the environment as well. So I think there is potential. But definitely there is this wave-like character that, when there is an economic crisis and now we have a war. So yes, these issues take a back seat, but we are at the point of climate change when something must be done and very immediately.
If I can continue. I think that I forgot to mention it in the presentation that I think that there could be a change in Slovakia because for now I mentioned 3 political parties who are talking about the climate and the environment, but I didn't talk about the other parties. And when we look at the Smer party of Prime Minister Fico, when we look at the Hlas party of the elected President Pellegrini, and when we look at the 3 other opposition parties, it looks like the agenda of the climate and environment doesn't even exist to them. They are not talking about the climate, they are not talking about the environment, and few of them doesn't even have these topics in their political program. So people don't know what are their positions about it. So I think as the years goes by and there will be more discussions about the Green Deal and all these issues, I think it can change because most of the Slovaks, when we are talking about the climate policies and the environmental protections, are for the protection and support these green topics. And I think that for the politician, there was a good example from Miloš, I think, from Poland. When we look at the history of talking about some environmental problems and challenges, when the politicians talk about some exact issue, like when we talk about the river and the pollution, when we talk about the air pollution, there wasn't a really big opposition to this issue. So I think the way, at least in Slovakia, for the environmental and the climate policies is to, for politicians, is to talk about the exact issue, not about the carbon neutrality as something that is far from the people and they don't understand it, but talk about it on these exact examples. So I think that the situation, at least in Slovakia, will change, but I'm not sure if for better or for worse.
Even though I can sum up the Czech Republic's green policy as many policies to appeal the EU, but little action, I don't want to be that skeptical, and I would like to say that thanks to the crisis, COVID crisis, the war in Ukraine, it gave us a new push in field of energy, in energy security, and thanks to that, and thanks to also green saving program, there is a solar energy boom in Czech Republic. So this gave us this advantage to think about energy in a different way than it was before. But to go back to the skeptical part, it's more economic reasons for the families to put their solar energy, to change the solar energy than the environmental. But still, there is a change going on, and we can be thanks for that to the crisis.
This is something that makes me really sad, actually, because when I think about the level of discussion we had in 2019 and now, I think this is a huge gap. And we were much more advanced in the discussion in 2019. This is my feeling, my personal feeling, when I look at my closest environment, when I look at my city. I think what we were discussing about environment and climate 2019 and now, like, the discussion was much better and advanced. And because of the crisis, we moved back. We're tracked back, and this is something that really makes me personally sad. And I think about it on a regular basis when I have to observe it. But I don't think everything is lost. I think the discussion is now elsewhere. We're talking about these packages, and I think to keep the discussion on a good level, and so that the discussion is important for the people and public opinion and all of us, we need good communication. And I think many people would agree that what happened with the Green New Deal in Europe, with the farmer protests and so on, it was mostly because of lack of the communication. Because it was, if you listen to populists, to far right, and they're saying Brussels, far away, deciding for us, and then you see what was done with the Green New Deal, I'm afraid that it was partially right what they're saying. This was agreed there and not properly consulted, not properly communicated to the people. And this is sad, because I think Green New Deal it's a good thing. It's a thing that we need as Europe. But because there were so many mistakes done on the way, we lost so much of the advantages we could use. And I mean, again, populists, people who are against right-wingers, will be using it against us also in the future. So I think we should work on it a lot, on communication. The topic of climate is extremely, again, difficult and complex. And when people have to think about that vis-a-vis the fact that the inflation in some of our countries was 18% a year, and I see prices in Budapest every year, and they are like crazy. Like, come to Warsaw, it's much cheaper. But seriously, right? So if you see that, I mean, we shouldn't be worried. We should be worried, but we should not be surprised that people are thinking about something else. And again, the war in Ukraine and the prices of energy in Poland, in my country, again, this year, prices for households will increase by 30%. So, I'm not surprised that people are questioning what's happening. So, communication, and this will maybe take longer than we expected, but this is important that we have people on our side. We don't do it against people, because then the backlash can be really, really terrible. So I would say that, and again, the good examples. So communication, and the Polish right and far right, they are using really examples in their campaign. And I saw the same in Germany on the posters of AfD, so the far right Germans. So and the same I see now in the Polish far right Confederation Party, who are saying that these elections are about my pork chops and about my car. So they are representing the plate and the driving wheel. And yeah, and people follow, because people really understand it. And when we say about something that will happen in 100 years and the next generation, we all know it's important, but this is not the language that makes it's emotional enough to make people vote and to make people to go to the street and support our cause. So yeah, I would say we can still succeed, but we have to change the way we communicate and explain better, because the world we're living is more and more difficult, and just if we want people to follow us, we need to make it more approachable, more tangible.
Oh, thank you very much, and thank you for all your contributions. I was wondering, as we still have roughly 10 minutes, I know we invited you for a 90-minute discussion, but as we started a little later, I figured that probably we would have time for 2 short or medium-sized questions from the audience. So probably I would ask my colleagues to help with the microphones. If there are any questions from the audience to our speakers? Yes, I can see one hand up there. Thank you.
Hi, dear all. My name is Reka Veres, and I'm coming from the sports sector, trying to learn how to make it a little bit greener. And I have a very simple question. It's a general question. Could you narrow down the leading environmental problem in terms of our countries that we should focus on? For example, if we organize a sport event, what would be the main principle? Is it energy efficiency, water consumption, biodiversity? I guess it's in Hungary rather the fossil fuels energy consumption, but I would be curious, what is your opinion on that? Because, for example, Mr. Houdin mentioned that air quality was identified in Poland, so I'm looking for such kind of focus. If we can narrow it down, what should we focus in our own sectors? Which angles of environmental protection, let's say?
Thank you. And probably let's see if there's any second question, because I think we wouldn't have time for more, but if there's one more, but if there aren't any more questions, then let's get to this, and whoever would like to start.
This is a very difficult question, and I think a very narrow one. So I think it's for me it's pretty difficult to answer. But I would say everything you mentioned, right? So sport events are being so huge. Some of them, look, the Olympics, that there is so many things to think about. So if you're asking me about like small scale events, then there's many small things that we have to think about, and especially if they target younger generation who is more aware towards the problem and who is more sensitive towards the problem, then really little symbolic things matter sometimes. And I think people are very allergic towards some mistakes that we make in all kinds of events, like by using plastic and all that. Of course, energy, if you can choose a venue that is using greener energy and more sustainable energy, all the sustainability of events matters. And but then I would say that the biggest problem from my perspective are these huge events. These huge events when we construct stadiums for one event and all that is everything that happened to the Olympics. Now, I mean, Paris is saying they are doing it in a different way. We will see. But yeah, all these mass events, but also in culture, right? Like when you produce so much pollution of all kinds, so much greenhouse gases because of what you have to build, of the people who are flying in and coming in. Yeah, so sport industry, just like any other industry, I think is facing the same challenges, and you just have to respond depending on the scale you are doing it. But I think even if you organize something small, you can be an example for people who are coming by reducing everything you have can reduce. So yeah, sorry for not being precise, just like a little comment.
I would like to just add to the Miller's words, emissions. We are having the hockey championship in Prague right now, and the amount of tourists coming to Prague is unbelievable. So I would add emissions to that.
I would also add emissions because in Slovakia we had many mountains with skiing resorts, and many people are going every winter there. But in the last few years we can see that on these smaller hills and in this lower position, the snow is there's no snow, and it used to be like half a meter of the snow 10-20 years ago, and now there's only green grass there. So I think related to sport, it would be the emissions and the global warming. So
I want to end on a positive note. So, okay. So first of all, it's great that you are here and you asked this question. I think all of us are very surprised that this is the question that came up in the discussion. And one thing about European environmental policy and global environmental thinking is that integrating this perspective into every activity. So when a river dies because of pollution, that's already way too late. to act. So that's a terrible tragedy which should be prevented. And so basically integrating environmental consciousness into all of our activities is I think should be one of the objectives of green politics and green policies. None of us will be able to tell you what to do in your sports event because we have no idea of what kind of sport, who are the participants, who are the spectators coming from, but just thinking over every aspect of it in your own events and in our own lives. So basically, can the athletes take the train or should they fly? So that's one question. The spectators go there by car or they are forced to take public transfer because there is no parking lot. So, and then whether, plastic bottles are there or there is recycling or you give water from other places. So these are small things, but and again, we cannot tell you from here. You know your own event much better than we do, but basically integrating this perspective is probably the most important thing. And I think the fact that you are here, I think is a great thing. And this is this is the positive aspect I want to close on. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for coming and talking to us today, and thank you for all of you for coming for this first panel. I think I was trying to do my best to drag this discussion down into the swamp of pessimism, but you ruined it with your question because eventually we had to end on a more positive note. But honestly, I'm really happy about this because I do believe that when we are discussing green policies and environmental protection and fight against climate change, it's very important to have a positive attitude and not only to discuss the worries and the potential disasters, but also the positive approaches and the strategies that we can choose. So I'm really happy that we could finally have a conversation that we can end on a positive note. Thank you again for being here with us today. And please do not go anywhere because in 15 minutes time, roughly 15 minutes time, we are going to continue with our second panel in which fabulous Hungarian green policy and environmental experts are going to discuss the Hungarian situation from a much more environmental expert perspective. So thank you again for your attention and see you soon.